Even as a full-time artist, meaning I get to draw, paint, to do something creative almost every single day, I have been completely hooked by the easy and bold coloring trend. And I think I understand the reasons why for me, but I'll get to those later. For now, I wanted to tell you that I wanted to make this video in case you're considering joining us adult coloring addicts, so that you will have the tools, some skills, some things you know how to do, so it will feel fun from the get-go, and you will join me and this beautiful adult coloring community that it's already out there. So with that, let's get started. To get started with alcohol markers, the first thing you'll want to do is put something behind the page you're coloring to protect from bleed through, as alcohol markers bleed a lot. I personally like using a piece of thicker paper like cardstock underneath, and what I do is I just kind of measure it and cut it to size so it's more comfortable to have it inside the book. A lot of alcohol markers come with this silicone or plastic protective sheets, and you can use them, but I'm going to show you why I don't. Let's suppose you did a lot of blending with dark colors, and then because you need to move the little plastic thing because it's not big enough, you paint with a lighter color on top. You can see the color of the marker doesn't really dry on the plastic, at least not fast enough. So that ink will come up to the paper once you use another color on top on the same spot. And of course, if this color is very light, it will really show up and stain whatever you're coloring. Of course, if you want to use this protective sheet, you can always clean it, but for me, that's just another extra thing to do that I'd rather not. I'd rather keep things super simple when I'm enjoying coloring. So these are the markers I'm going to use. I'm using the Ohuhu 120 marker set with brush and fine points. But for everything I'm going to show you today, I don't want you to focus on the brand or color codes of the markers, but on the techniques and the values of the colors and their shades. Because I'm a firm believer that you can get great results with any art supply and you can enjoy it too. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to get that beautiful, satisfying, streak-free coloring. And as you can see, it's really easy. The trick is you have to keep moving your marker up and down in lines. If you stop for a little while and come back to it, it will dry and then you will notice the lines overlapping. So the trick is to be fast and finish an area right away, but also not crazy fast so you can give time for the ink to fill the point of the marker and pour onto the paper. Smaller areas are of course easier to fill with continuous lines like this, and you'll see how easy it is to get no streaks at all. But if by any chance you run into an area that is larger and more irregular like this one, what I like to do is color in tiny little circles filling up the space. The reason this works better for larger areas is because the tiny circle movements allow for more ink to saturate the nib. And this gives you a little bit more time before the ink dries on the paper, so you can get back to it and cover larger areas. I've done entire backgrounds with this technique and you still get the uniform smooth finish as you can see here. Second tip of the day, even with thick and bold outlines, sometimes it happens that you color a little bit outside of the lines. And this is problematic because, for example, here I'm going to color the glasses in a lighter color so that the little bit of brown would show. To erase that, all you need to do is grab your colorless blender and go over that stain a lot of times. This will move the pigment from the stain down to the paper you were using to protect from the bleed through, and it will disappear from the page. Just be sure you really allow this to dry completely before putting any other color on top. Another thing I want to show you is how you can easily achieve the effect of transparency. We're going to do this on the sunglasses, making them appear as if they were see-through. So here's the color that I used to color my entire bear, and luckily enough a color that's pretty similar but a couple of shades lighter is right above it. So I'm going to grab that one and I'm going to color the inside of the glasses. First, let me get the hearts of the bear's eyes, and then as I start to color the glass, you're going to see that since it's not dry, the color looks pretty much the same. But once that marker dries, it will be the perfect shade, showing a little bit of a difference in color that will create the illusion of an object being on top of the face, creating a slight coloring change. And we are going to later accentuate this illusion by using highlights. You are probably already getting that when you use alcohol markers, it's really important to let things dry before you layer more color on top to create different effects. Because of that, I'm going to move forward by jumping around all over my page as the other colors dry. So now I'm coloring the glasses with this very light pink, and you're going to see I'm not coloring evenly because we are going to color them so that they appear to have a glittery surface. As I've been doing these different things, the bear has completely dried, so I'm going to show you how to add shadows to your bold and easy coloring, because that really takes it to the next level. What I like to do is to use the exact same color I used to color any area for the shadows. This works perfectly with alcohol markers because once they're dry, if you do another stroke of the same color on top, it will look darker. So this is a very simple way to figure out which color you need to use to create shadows, because when you put it on top, it will be a darker shade, which is perfect. To draw the shadows, you need to determine where your light source would be. I usually like to pretend that the light is coming from the top right corner, so I draw or color my shadows on the opposite corner of that. To get good at this, I recommend, of course, you practice, but also observe not only other coloring pages, but illustrations and paintings and photos to see how shadows are laying down on things. Because most areas are dry, I add shadows to everything, like the flower and the glasses too. And don't forget, I'm using the same colors I used to color them in the first place. So for this thing where the bear is leaning on, I'm just grabbing that green again and going on top of things, because of course there's gonna be a shadow underneath his arms. I just figure it out slowly. I also have a little bit of creative fun with it, as I add some smaller shadows around the elements on the box, going around the flowers and the dots too. While I was doing this, someone got tired of not having my whole attention, so she plopped onto my book. I think that was her signal that it's time to take a break. Back from the break, and it's time to show you how to make these glittery using alcohol markers. Again, we're going to use 3 markers. First, the one we already used as a base color, and then we need to grab 2 other colors that are darker than the first one. We start by grabbing the same color we use for the background and drawing dots. Larger dots with the brush side of the marker and smaller dots with the fine point on the other side. Then with the first darker color you do the same. This time less larger dots and more smaller ones. On this second layer we really need to start paying attention which areas of the sunglasses will be darker and which ones will be reflecting the light or having highlights. The parts that would be darker need to be more saturated with dots, so more dots there that also need to be closer together. Once I've gone all over the glasses, I use the third and darkest color. For this one, I only do little dots that are closer together and more abundant where the glasses would have shade. The glasses are ready for highlights, so let me just show you how to do highlights on the entire page. To create highlights on top of a page colored with alcohol markers, there's different things you can use. You can use different types of acrylic paint markers, different types of white pens, and even white colored pencil. Right now I'm going to use this Uniball white gel pen because it's the most popular and I've been loving it too. So of course I will link this one for you in the description. Adding highlights is probably easier than what you think. All you need to do is draw a thin line opposite to the thick lines you colored for the shadows. So because I decided to put my light source on the top right corner, all of the lines I draw will be aligned with that corner. Adding more white details with the pen also takes your coloring to a different level. Here you'll see how much more interesting this area will be once I have these little cute dots all over. It really gives it all much more dimension. But back to the glitter. This is the most important step to create the illusion of glitter using any color. We are going to get our pen and draw white dots all over, but we're going to draw them in 2 sizes, smaller and bigger ones. And we have to place the smaller and more separated dots in the areas of the object that would be darker. On the areas where the light would hit the object and you would have a highlight, you need to cluster your dots together so they almost look like a solid white space. To really punch this effect up, I always like to draw a couple of starbursts around a few of my dots, just to communicate that this area really shines. And now that we're doing highlights, we can also finish the transparency effect by drawing a couple of lines on top of the glass. You could do this with your gel pen too. You would only need to smudge it a little bit with your fingertip, but I'm going to use a brush nib paint marker so that you can see how this one goes on top. This first page is finished. Let's move to a second page so I can show you how to color grass with alcohol markers. You need 3 shades of green, a light, medium, and dark. And again, for today's video, I don't think it's important to focus as much on the coats of these markers I'm using because you really can do it with any brand, and what's important is the shade of colors you pick. The first thing we need to do is cover the whole area that is going to be grass with the lighter shade. Oops, I don't know how that little green dot got there, but we already know how to remove it, right? Okay, so of course again here, before adding details to the grass, it's best to allow that colored area to dry completely. I am not the best at being patient and waiting for things to dry, so what I usually do is jump around and go color something else to keep me distracted. Once I let time pass by coloring around and the main area of the grass dry, I take back the same light color and I start to draw different grass spades. The great thing about this first layer of stripes with draw is that you can make mistakes and see where you like the grass to be more abundant and where you just want to have a little texture, because this first color doesn't really show as much. Once you're happy with it, you get the middle shade and start adding more lines on top. A little less this time and a little bit more apart, but in general about the same. Then finally, with the darkest color, you add more spades on top. This time less quantity because these are basically shadows. For this page, I also chose to go around the whole thing adding a shadow like we learned earlier. And to finish, I used the white pen to add little details that look like tiny flowers and a little bit of highlights. Now, how about I show you how you can blend? The way I like to do it is I pick my colors and keep them all in my hand with the cap slightly off so I can exchange them quickly. I want to be able to access each color quickly because the trick for blending is not allowing the ink to dry in a way that it's similar to watercolor kinda. I like to start with my lightest color, and for this mushroom cap you're gonna see I'll be using that one where a highlight would be. Then I use my mid-tone coloring on both sides of the first lighter area. Once the two colors are side by side and starting to blend, I take my lighter color again and go over everything that was overlapping, so I add more pigment and more alcohol, making the ink flow more and making the colors easier to mix. Lastly, I add the darker color. Same process, color on the sides, allowing it to overlap, and then I take the mid-tone and go over that overlap a lot, so it helps with the blending. You really need to overlap things quickly for them to be able to blend, and again, this is why I keep the 3 markers uncapped in my hand. Once again, I'm gonna let that area dry before adding details, but before that I'm gonna fix that little bleed that I have from all the blending. When you blend, you get more ink out, so sometimes this happens, but this is the trick we've already learned. Now I'm gonna skip ahead and show you how to add patterns. Again, you need the first layer of markers to be completely dry. Then you just draw whatever you want on top. For the middle of the rainbow, I wanted some subtle polka dots drawn with the same color, but then I didn't like how separated I drew those, so I grabbed a darker marker and went over that area with polka dots that were closer together. Once it's dry, it's easy to draw any pattern. I'm keeping it simple by doing stripes on the pink and then little hearts on the green part. Adding texture is really fun and you can get super creative with it. It also makes your pages look more finished. On the pink, I decided I wanted to play with the stripe pattern a little bit more, so I drew more lines with a darker color and then with my white gel pen on top. Now I'm going to finish the page by coloring the animals, and as you're going to see, instead of coloring them solid, I have a little fun with it by using different colors and making them different. On the bear, I used 2 different colors, and because I wanted the areas where the 2 colors meet to look like a soft, furry blend, I just do the little round circles technique, so when the 2 different colors are placed next to each other, they blend a tiny bit. I was going to paint the puppy, but I grabbed this gray and I forgot it's almost dried up because I used it for the 1 marker challenge and completely drained it. So I just grabbed a darker gray and went over everything, and as you can see, it fixed it. It completely covered that first color. Again, played with 3 different markers, having soft blends between all the colors. For the cat, I wanted a different effect, so I wanted it to dry completely before adding details with another color. As I waited for it to dry, I wanted to color a bit of the background, and for this I'm going to show you how to blend to white. To do this, the first thing you have to do is put down a layer of your colorless blender. I put the colorless ink farther away from the outline of the drawing, closer to the white, as I am blending to white like I said. Then I take my background color and I put it in between the outline of the drawing and the area I already colored with the blender. Because the blender is there, the ink from my blue marker is gonna blend a little bit into it and look like it's a gradient to white. To make this blend even better, I grab a 3rd marker in a lighter shade and go over the area where the colorless marker and the dark blue were touching. When I was done with the background, the animals were dry enough so I could add details. I wanted to add some hearts on the mushroom cap that the bear is wearing, and I also went ahead and added stripes and spots to the cat. You can see there's a clear difference in the effect you get when you do the spots on the animals when the layers are wet versus when you draw them when the first layer is dry. I also added shadows using the same colors I used on the animals before, and I wanted to create an extra shadow separating my characters from that rainbow. Because I did not want to grab each color of the rainbow individually and have to try to match them to the shadows, what I did here is grab a light gray and I created that shadow that separated the foreground from the background with only one color. Got my highlights on, and that's it for this page. Those were going to be all the tips I shared with you today, but I kept coloring for myself by myself and I decided to color some circles as bubbles, and I thought I would share that too. Coloring bubbles is super easy. I use 5 markers, a light shade of blue, very, very light shade of blue, a light shade of teal, pink, purple, and orange. I use the orange, pink, purple, and teal around the bubble on different sides, and then I just blend everything with the super light blue going on top and covering that area of the center of the circle that I had left uncolored. Now, what makes this work is outlining it with white. Because this is such a small circle with such a thick outline, I did smudge the white a little bit with my fingertip to cover as much of that black as I could. And then I just added a few highlights. Let me show you, once I finish this page and added a dark background, how much this bubble now pops up, and it looks very beautiful. And that is the last thing I wanted to share today. I really think coloring has become so popular amongst adults because there's always something new you can try. It's very entertaining, it's very relaxing. You can make it as simple or as complicated as you want. You can finish a page in an hour if you want. It's a really nice, soft way to get creative on your daily life, and I'm here for it. Like I said before, this is a creative practice on which you can always be trying new things and improving. So if you like this video and you would like to see a part 2 with more techniques on how to master your alcohol markers for coloring, let me know. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss it when I post a new video. In the meantime, you can enjoy this other video I created showing you techniques you can use for coloring with acrylic paint markers. I hope you enjoyed this video and that I'll see you on Friday with a new one. Have the most wonderful day. Bye!